In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites, MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed. This morning, we would like to talk about, from the topic, love is the absence of judgment. Love is the absence of judgment. And there's always good that develops out of our relationships. On the other hand, there's those who unfortunately experience disheartening, those that feel disappointment that ends a lot of their relationships. But in either case, many of us have found ourselves what I call at odds with people. Many of us have found ourselves at odds with people because of how they view us or the way how our relationship turned out. In spite of our relationship's progress or relationship outcomes, it's very easy to understand that some people will judge us regardless. Whether there's progress in our relationship or how our relationship outcome comes, we will have people that will judge us regardless accordingly to what they think. But whether they aren't happy for us in growing in our relationship, or they aren't happy that we've overcome a relationship setback, judgment prevents us from something. Judgment prevents us from seeing the good that lies beyond appearances. And when we do that, that's what closed minds and closed eyes see. But for the sake of our discussion this morning, the latter is what I would like to talk about. When we have those who surround us in our inner circles who aren't happy for us, that aren't happy that we've overcome some bad relationships, or how we've prevailed through personal setbacks. How we handle or deal with people who become mad at us or mad with us because they feel that we haven't suffered the way they expected us to. I want you to think about that. How do we actually deal with people who are angry or upset with us because they feel, because of our outcome of a relationship, that we haven't suffered the way they have expected. We haven't struggled as much. We haven't been in the type of disappointment that some were expecting. We've overcame instead of surrendered to. I want you to think about that. But more importantly, we've shown the strength to press through our lives. And we didn't talk the talk, but we actually trusted in God. It's very hard to really digest those that are in our inner circle that promote that type of sentiment toward us. The things that we go through in a growing relationship or the unexpected outcome of a relationship. But it's in our trusting in God and not in ourselves that many of us find ourselves being exposed to ill feelings and regret in others. And why? Why? Because we've learned how to endure? I want you to think about this. We all have been very fortunate in any regards of our relationship building, growing, maturity, and like I said earlier, the unfortunately of disheartening and disappointments in our relationship, but we learn how to endure. And when we get to the point sometimes and we find ourselves surrounded by people that have ill feelings and regret because we have learned how to endure. Think about this. There are people today that are at odds with us. mad with us because we've pressed through the difficult times in our lives and we've trusted God. We've pressed through the difficult times in our lives and we have trusted God to act on our behalf. They're mad behind that. There's people that are actually upset behind that because we have surrendered it to God. You know, we understand that our Lord is a God of action, and we've surrendered it. The Bible's definition of the word act, A-C-T, means to fulfill or perform to a correspondent action. The word correspondent means you and I as the communicator of the request. And we have people that have allowed our lives to manifest and grow before them. And they have seen the bond, the relationship grow, the strength of becoming spiritually mature with God, and how our relationships with God has prevailed as we went through difficult times, and how God has manifest his will and his hand over all. And they're upset. They're upset. And what's important here is for us to understand, and for them, how did we get to this point? How did we get to the point where God now acts on our behalf? How did we get to that point to where we've surrendered all to God? We've gotten to that point because we have done something. We have intentionally chosen to trust and depend on God rather than doubt him. That's how we've gotten there. We've gotten to that point, and they don't see that because of closed minds. We've gotten to the point that we've went around the judgment and the criticism, and we did something intentionally. We've chosen to trust and depend God rather than doubt him. And what's the fruit of that labor? What's that fruit of that choice? We are now cooperating with the Lord's process of spiritual growth. And it's within our spiritual growth, or our all spiritual growth, that lies three things. That lies opportunities for progression. Another word for progression is maturity. Progression in our character, in our obedience, and in our faith. When we intentionally choose to be still before God, the Lord unleashes his will. The Lord unleashes his power on our behalf. Now, let's just step back for a moment and think about this. With all that being said, why are some people at odds with you? Why are some people mad with you? Do they consider you a threat? Are they happy or unhappy with themselves? Or do they just want the blessings that you have? I want us to really think about what I'm getting ready to say. And I want to sit here for a moment because I think it's very important that we understand a couple of things. That people will envy how others love you, show love to you, and have love for you. People will envy the way you handle a situation that they couldn't. But wait for it. What would have broken them didn't break you. I need us to understand that, because that's the real time, or as they say, keeping it 100, and the real challenges of life today. Because exposure sometimes opens up a door that allows people to see exactly the fullness of where God has found us, has brought us through, and is still working on us. Not that we've arrived, but God is still working on us. And that has brought into focus for a lot of people criticism. That has brought into a lot of people judgment because of their lack of willing to intentionally choose God over trying to work on things themselves. Now, there's many people that use the word jealousy and envy interchangeable. But I like you guys to consider these two. Jealousy is about disposition. It's about attitude. It's about feeling. And here's an example. In a relationship, one may perceive a threat or worry that the relationship is changing in a negative way. That's jealousy. Now, again, there may be several other ways that people could see this, but this is just something for us to really understand where the conversation is going. Where, on the other hand, envy is wanting what someone else has. People feel a sense, listen to this word, people feel a sense of resentment toward another person for obtaining something they want but have yet to achieve. There's a balance in the description. I said earlier that in spite of our relationship progress or relationship outcomes, some people will judge, some people will criticize regardless. And I truly believe they get to this point. We find that some people will be at odds with us or mad at us at this point because of our strength reminds them of something. It reminds them of their weaknesses. What we've labored and decided to trust in God in, they haven't. I said earlier, we've decided to do more than actually talk the talk. We've actually trusted God. And you see, you have a lot of people that talk the talk. But when it comes down to surrender and allowing God to steer courses in lives, there is a difference there. Because you can't drive and God be in the back seat. You have to surrender. And you have to allow God to move you to seasons in your lives to where there's an enormous amount of pruning and understanding that takes place. I said that we find that some people will be at odds or even mad at us because of our strengths that reminds them of their weaknesses. And a lot of their weaknesses because they're trying to do it in their own strength instead of relying on God. How do they get there? How do they seek to reform their mind? I believe that for those that are at odds with others, there are things they haven't learned to be able to receive from the Lord. There's some things they haven't learned. And it starts with them with the need on working on themselves. We have to, and I'm talking about those that struggle in this area. When I say we have to own who we are. So what do I mean by that? We have to own who we are. That's past and present. And we have to have the desire to let go what's holding us back. That's how I believe we move forward on working on ourselves. And that's regardless of whether or not it's forgiveness or hurt. Because I think what a lot of people don't understand, that part of our growth reveals that pain is not without purpose. Secondly, we have to stop, and again, I'm talking about those that fall into this posture. we have to stop complaining about what the Lord isn't doing. And let's be quite frank, that lesson is over 2,000 years ago, and a lot of people still haven't gotten it yet. Our complaining doesn't move God. Obedience does. I'm going to say it again. We have to stop learning about complaining about what the Lord isn't doing. Our complaining does not, I repeat, does not move God. Obedience does. And thirdly, and I think this is equally important, is that a change in our lives must happen. A change in our lives can only happen when we change what's in our heart. That's Lady P, I think that's the only way we propel out of this posture. Because, again, Facebook family, I want you to think about this. Those who are at odds with others, let's just think about this for a moment. How would their lives be different if they learned to let go of the things that have already let go of them? I want you to think about that. Come on now. From relationships long gone, from old grudges, from regrets, to all the coulda, shoulda, to the dead friendships they're still hanging on to. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. How differently would their lives be? And when I say all of this, it comes to this point for perspective. It's allowing God to set them and us free that fall into that category. Allow God to set us free from the burdens of the past that we can't change. I want us to think about something. A sense of blessedness comes from a change of heart, not from more blessings. I'm going to say that again. A sense of blessedness comes from a change of heart, not from more blessings. You have to have the willingness and the desire to surrender. What's in your heart has to be let go. You have to intentionally, for those that fall into this category, they have to intentionally choose to surrender and allow God to steer their lives. And, it makes you think that those that fall into this posture, those that fall into this category of judgment, of criticizing others, are they unhappy with themselves? And that's a question. That's not me making a determination. That's not me criticizing or judging them. It's a question. Are they unhappy with their lives? Because one thing I know for sure, unhappy people do a lot of evaluating. Unhappy people do a lot of evaluating and judging other people. That's for sure. But not to point the finger at them. It's a question. It's a question. Because, again, we get back to the setting here. Many people admire the things that set relationships apart from others. The things that they crave for in a relationship, but won't put in the work to achieve in the relationship. That's the domino. That's the delta. Because you have people that truly don't understand or embrace that a relationship requires a lot of work. And a relationship is not, listen to me clearly, a relationship is not built on convenience. A relationship is not built on convenience. And what defines convenience in this realm is the state of being able to proceed with something without little effort or difficulty. Growth, change of heart, mindset, transition that brings upon change. These are just a couple of things as we talk about this that needs to really focus, well, for those that find themselves in this category or in this posture, because our relationship progress, our relationship outcomes shouldn't determine what's missing out of someone else's life. Whatever a relationship progress manifests, or the relationship outcome, whether it's disheartening or a disappointment, shouldn't matter or shouldn't be determined out of what's missing out of someone else's life. That's a place to where we have to really understand that the love and the compassion that's built on relationship, friendship, is driven just by that. Love, compassion, understanding. And when we interject judgment, when we interject criticism, we are now falling out of line in how a relationship is built, the characteristics that's needed to sustain it, and the longevity to carry it. Lady P, I'd like to share with some of those comments.
Well, I was trying to understand what you meant at first. No, go back where you were at. Go back where you were at. I was trying, because I want to make a reference to that last statement. When you made that last statement, I normally start from the beginning with your negatives and then work my way down. But when you ended with the last statement about how our relationship progress or relationship outcome shouldn't determine what's missing out of someone else's lives, I had to, because I have to visualize as I'm listening. I visualize, I draw pictures of what is being said, and I was trying to understand that, and then I caught, because I'm always about life application and being able to give an example so that people can understand, because words would just be words if you don't understand, or if you can't visualize, what the person is saying. Because when you can visualize what the person is saying and understand, then the life application you can put in the life application. And that's why a lot of people fall, because they have all this word, but they don't really have understanding, So I had to really think about what you were saying. And I think I got it when I was just applying different things, and I didn't get it until you're right, because your relationship progress, it should be love, basically. That's what it is. It shouldn't be, and this is the example that I got when I was trying to draw the picture and get to what you're saying. It shouldn't be when you said it is not determined by what's missing out of someone else's life. So, example, if there's something that's missing out of my life, what you're saying is you trying to fulfill, or me pressuring you to help me fulfill what's missing out of my life does not determine the progress and the outcome of this relationship. Because even if you want to help to fulfill those things, it is the love that you have for a person that keeps y'all going, which help y'all to progress and to reach the outcome and the goals of what you're trying to do. Love is always the root and the background. But if it's always based on you fulfilling what I need, you fulfilling what's missing, not what I need, because there's a difference between what's missing and a need. You know, it's like a need and a want. That now it's important that things that are missing gets fulfilled, but that shouldn't determine the total progression and outcome of a relationship, although it does to a certain extent, So it has to be a balance there. If it's just all of fulfilling what's missing in somebody's life, then there's no balance. But if there's an understanding of how important certain thing is, which is a need in the individual life, and if I can't fulfill that need, you're willing to help in that, okay? In the right season, because there's due season for everything. And I'm gonna make this as simple as possible what I'm trying to say to people, because I can get a little deep on that statement, but I'm gonna make it very simple to really understand the progress and the outcome. So that's why I said to a certain extent it does determine, because if it's something that I cannot do for myself. So for instance, we know that we should not masturbate. It's the only thing I can make it simple, okay? So everybody like to talk about sex. So if you have that need and I'm your wife and I don't fulfill that will take an effect on the progression and the outcome of this relationship to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying? That's a need that I am supposed to fulfill. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said there's a difference between a need and what's missing. Because you use the word what's missing. The relationship should not progress, and the progression and the outcome of the relationship should not be on what's missing. That's not, when you talk about that topic, what I just said, that's not a missing topic. That's a need. That's what is required in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? So when you have people not fulfilling that, it could become a problem in that relationship. But the key thing to that, because then there's relationships where that can't be fulfilled because sometimes there's sicknesses, there's illnesses, whatever. And so the root of what always goes back to the main thing I said is love. Because even when that need is not being fulfilled, love being the root is what will continue to allow that relationship to progress and have a positive outcome. So I at first I had to be like, what are you talking about? Because I think I drilled my point there. Amen. We have to be very conscious of understanding what is our responsibility and what we are willing to fulfill in each other's life, so that a relationship could progress towards the outcomes of the vision and the focus within that relationship. So with that being said, there were a lot of things that you said, and I got stuck on that one point for a while. And but when you I'm going to apply some biblical things now, the word now to what you shared with the audience today and the people of God. And again, for those who are joining us, if you are led to call and share some of your input with us within the last 15 minutes of the podcast, you can call in at the 855-565-4143. And just make sure you limit your comments to 1 minute so that it gives other people time to share their thoughts as well. And so back to when you were saying people were envy, you spoke about intentionally choose. And when I heard you say intentionally choose, God is an intentional God as well. So we should be intentional on what we do. Nothing is by accident. Nothing with God is by accident. So if we created in the image of God, everything that we do should be intentional. And that's why when people do certain things to other people, it hurts so bad, because people take it as if it was intentional. And so sometimes we need to communicate or understand why our significant other or family members or whoever it may be are doing what they are doing, because anything that I am receiving from a person is just it's just natural. It's an intentional. People take it to heart. It's an intentional, and because nothing should be done just to be, you know what I'm saying? And, because life is hard. Life is serious, And so when you just throw things out there and just say things, and then people got to figure out, well, was he kidding? Was he joking? We should do nothing that isn't intentional, because when we do that, it cuts out a lot of the nonsense. It cuts out a lot of the false perceptions, because anything that's intentional should be genuine, should be heartfelt, should be done with understanding and knowledge and wisdom. And when it isn't, then that's where the communication has to come in. And so that's why you have people who are gift for gabbers. You have to, sometimes the gift for gabbers have to still examine and be careful what they're saying, because people do take things to heart.
That's right.
Because, life is not about all the time joking all the time and this all the time. You should be able to be seasoned enough to understand that when there's communication going on between two people, when you should be just having a gift for gab, or you should be intentional with what you're saying, so that people can really understand where you're coming from. And that's how relationships are built. And with God never wastes his time with us.
Absolutely.
Not being intentional with his words.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's, oh my God, I feel that. My God, I feel it. My God, I feel that.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
God doesn't, you know what I'm saying? And so when you're having dialogue with, I feel that sometimes we have got to learn really how, and that's why, I'm not really a talkative person. Now, I'm a talk to them when we're talking about the word, or when we're talking about, you know what I'm saying? Because we're talking about something right now, but I'm not a gift for gabber. I don't just walk into a place and I listen, you know what I'm saying? And so, because then when I listen, I have gained, and I'm not saying everybody has to be with me, but we have to train ourselves how to be intentional with what we say, which means you're not playing all the time. You're not just talking all the time just because you want to be the whatever. But that was what I just felt in the spirit when the Lord said he's intentional. Everything he does is intentional. So why should we take things lackadaisical, or why should we joke around all the time? And there's a time and a season for everything,
That's right.
Because, when you spoke about the envy and people would envy you because of the blessings that you get and because of how someone else is loving you. Well, scripture-wise, you see that with Joseph and his brothers. You see that in other stories, but that's the first one that came to my mind. How, with Joseph, and how his father loved him, how his brothers, now they did an intentional action. That came from their heart, how they threw him, and, you know what I'm saying? And then when they threw him in the pit, even Joseph's bloodline, from the half side of the family sold him into Egypt. Yeah, that's a point we need to read, y'all. And so it just that jealousy and envy, it does come from the heart. And sometimes when people hear the word jealous, no, I'm not jealous. Yeah, you check your attitude. Sometimes I don't think we just hear the word jealous and we immediately come into a defense, or, you know what I'm saying, or want to be offensive about it. When, if you check your attitude towards a person, you will realize, what that is jealousy. But because jealousy is such a strong word, we just want to brush it off and maybe say, no, I ain't jealous. But you are. If your attitude towards people are always negative, if your attitude about other people is is not liking them, if your attitude is always toward people, about, oh, she thinks that's jealousy, that's envy. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you think about, like you said, the progress and the outcome, when it comes to stuff like that, it made me think about Joshua and the others, because when you are not jealous and envy about the progress and the outcome of others' lives, you will join them and understanding or wanting to understand or learning why it is that their progress and outcome is the way it is. And it's because those who have jealousy and envy is because their progress and outcome is doing without God. It's doing without God. You mentioned something about working on themselves, and I put versus building a relationship with God, because when you're working on yourself and you see that you're not getting where someone else doing it by doing it your way, and you're seeing this someone else by and that judging kitchens because they're doing it God's way and you're doing it your way. So you're working on yourself, but what you should be first doing is building a relationship with God, and that's the point I want to build. Working on yourself is fine, but if you're not first building a relationship with God, then you just working on yourself is always going to cause you to be envy and jealous of what somebody else has had, because they may be getting blessed more quickly or more than you. They may have God's favor. You know what I'm saying? So we have to start with the fact of building that relationship with God, because when you do that, then you can sincerely work on yourself according to the word of God. Because like you said, pain is not without purpose, but if your pain is always because you working on you, I'm doing me, but there's no Jesus and there's no God in it, then you're always going to be complaining, and like you said, complaining versus obedience with God. The word says obedience is better than sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? Obedience is better than sacrifice. So instead of you complaining, you should be working on that obedience, building that relationship with God, because you're sacrificing that obedience. It's going to keep leading you to complaining. And so we have to learn that you said something about change can only happen when it's from the heart. That was so true. If you find yourself still feeling a certain way towards somebody for 20, 30, 40 years, you need to examine your heart. You need to examine your heart, because like you said, that person has already, and that was a nugget. That person has already let go of you. When are you going to let go of you and your stinky thinking and your selfish attitude, and your jealousy and your envy? That was so true what you said. When you find that people are no longer involved in your life and no longer picking the call and checking on you and no longer, they have already let go of you, because they have already, they have already understood where you at with them in their relationship with them. And so they have moved on. It doesn't mean they don't love you, but they have already let go to understand the fact that there's something that needs to be done there, and they're not going to waste time. Jesus didn't waste time with nobody that was not on the path that he was on, or that was not in the route and in the path of where he was. He didn't waste time. And so when we stop wasting time with others that we know still have certain things toward us in their heart, that's on the person who's still walking around with what they need to evaluate. When you said unhappy people do a lot of evaluating, I don't see how they can be doing a whole lot of evaluating. They're doing a whole lot of judging, because if they're evaluating, the word says examine yourself daily. That's why I said it starts with your relationship with God. What are they evaluating? If they're so unhappy, then what are they evaluating? Themselves? Me. Oh God, I feel me. Why? You understand what I'm saying? So they're not evaluating themselves, or examining the word or trying to build a relationship with God. They're just judging, and that's why they're so happy. Because when you're not judging, you're thankful.
That's right.
You're thankful.
That's right.
When you're not judging, you are thankful. So when we put in the work, okay, and that was another thing, we have to put in the work, but faith without works is dead. So a lot of us are just putting in the work, but we have no faith. So you just putting in the work, which means you're doing it your way.
That's right.
And not God's way. Because faith without works is dead. The word faith is, it didn't say works without faith. It said faith. Faith is first. So what's missing? Like you said, what's missing? So you walking around wanting somebody else to fix what's missing in your life. You know, this one thing dropped in my mind before we started. And it just dropped in my mind. And I see now is for this point, right, when you went into the what's missing. People who are, when it comes to marriage, relationship, and love, I'm going to speak on marriage and I'm going to end here. So if anyone wants to call in, you can. Wounded and broken people should not be in the, and we've always been saying this. They're not ready for relationships. They're not ready for marriages. Wounded and broken people will not last in any type of relationship, in any type of marriage. Wounded and broken people are toxic to themselves, are toxic to those who are around them, and is toxic even to God. Because all they would do is complain, and waiting for, and not evaluating and really examining themselves. The word said, examine yourself daily. So, you know, when you're in communication, and this is my last one, we have communication and we talking, when I'm about to say something, I always examine myself in everything that I'm saying to make sure that when I'm talking to you, or we having our heavy conversation, that I'm examining myself, because if I'm saying that you're not doing something, but yet I don't realize, well, wait a minute, Robin, well, you're not so and so either. So how can you, in a sense, so how can you so and so and so and so? You should always be examining, you know? And that's why God even says a soft-spoken word, and he talks about a lot of things in the Bible of how we should speak to people and how we should talk to people. You know, I don't have time to go through all that right now because we're in the last 12 minutes of the podcast right now. But get in the Word. Get in the Word. You know, and I'm a firm believer, and I'm a teacher where I'm going to always tell you, go find it for yourself. If you hear me say something, go find it for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Go find it for yourself, because you know people want you to always take them to the river to drink, you know, and teach them how to drink. What's wrong with you teaching yourself how to drink? You got the same tools I have. You got the same resources I have. You know, you only walk people hand by hand when they're babes. You know, and sometimes and you're just patient with the grown people who are still babes. But you still learn how to let go when their hearts is not where it should be. And so that's where I'm going to end on that. We have to be intentional. If God is intentional, we should be intentional. We shouldn't take anything to the point of not caring and being lackadaisical about what we do, about what we say, about what we share. Everything should have a meaning and a purpose. And that's what intentional is. Everything has a meaning, a purpose, and a destiny. So whatever we say, whatever we do, it should help to get someone, starting with you, from point A to point B. Because we're growing daily, because at some point, the growth stops. When we think of, and I'm saying investment to the body, but the growth stops. Some seasons, some areas, it stops. And some of us are stopping it even before it started. So, it has to be intentional. I'm going to give it back to you. I should you wrote some things down.
I'm a firm believer and I'm in all agreement in what you were saying, that I think the issues for a lot of people that find themselves in that posture of judging and criticism, and when I say evaluating others, is simply because they're not committed to building that intentional relationship with God. I said something earlier from the very outset. I said, those that are intentional of having a relationship with God, they don't talk the talk. They actually trust God. They have decided to surrender to God. And that's the difference from being committed and non-committal. Because you have people that find themselves in this posture that they're not all in. They're not all in, and they haven't decided to cross over. They still want the flesh to be in control. They still want to be able to say things and do things and treat people a certain way without regards. And one of the things that you hit on that's so true in regards to the progression or the maturity of the outcomes of the relationships is because there is no labor in these people. They're just doing this. There's no labor. When you find yourself intentionally pursuing God, there is a labor to seek God, the characteristics of God, for a renewed mindset of God, to walk a certain way, to build yourself a certain way. There is labor. There is a change, a transition that grabs hold of you. People, and again, this is my personal opinion, that find themselves in a non-committal sense aren't there yet. And they're not there yet because of their own decision. And again, I believe, and again, this is my personal opinion, is because they're holding on to things that's prohibiting them to move closer in with God. Because we have to understand, God knows what's in your heart. You can tell me anything you want. You can tell me anything. God knows. So a lot of people find themselves in this capsule that they don't want to break out of. I shouldn't say don't want to, but they're struggling to do so because they want to have it their way. They don't want to surrender and let God drive. They want to drive it because they want it to be driven their way. But it's fascinating how people that and we all are in a group or surrounded by people that we constantly know some of this is that's in their lives, that they are mad or at odds with you because you've taken the intentional steps to move closer to God. And you understand that to fix my present is to allow God to take control and to move me according to His will. And where a lot of people are stuck at is that they're still trying to repair their past to move on. And you can't. You can't repair your past. You can't change it. You can't edit it. It is what it is. And that's what I meant when I said, how differently would their lives be if they learned to let go of the things that have already let them go? You can't change what's already been done. The coulda, shoulda, it's done. It's done. And we have to come to this point to where we have to allow God to set us free from this. And it goes back to what we were talking about in regards to a changed heart.
You can't change your past, but you can change your future.
Oh, absolutely. Amen. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And by doing that, then you can repair whatever brokenness that may have left you feeling a certain way, or may have because see, that's where restoration come in.
And that's the labor I was talking
that's
about.
why I said that's where restoration. Okay, so you may not be able to repair, but you can restore. You can restore the broken heart of someone from whatever may have been done. I mean, because I understand what you're saying, but I just want to, because sometimes you just leave something and be like, what? No, because God is about restoration. God is about restoring. What's done is done, yes, because when you said that, I visualized everything. I could have torn this dress, okay, and to say that I can't repair it, not the way that it was, but I can sew it up. Is that truly repaired it to its original state? No, it's not. But I can restore it, to a place to where I can still utilize it. I can still be in relationship with it. I can still adore and adorn. You see what I'm saying? I can do that. I can restore. But because like they said, what's done is done. And sometimes some people just don't want to move on, even when you're trying to restore. But that's on them. That's on them. And
that's another episode.
Yeah.